Farmer accidentally defeats alien warrior, now she's enchanted by his strength. HFY sci-fi story. In the quiet hills of Willow Creek, nestled far from the bustling cities, Alyssa Turner had built a life for herself on the farm her grandparents had left her. The work was hard, but she loved the rhythm of it, the steady plow of the field, the feel of the earth beneath her hands, and the simple pleasures of watching the seasons turn. But everything changed one warm summer evening. A sudden flash of light tore across the sky, followed by a deep rumble that shook the ground. Alyssa froze, a strange mix of curiosity and unease stirring in her chest. The tractor sputtered to a stop, and she climbed out to investigate. As she approached the woods on the edge of her property, she saw it, a massive crater in the earth, and lying at its center, a strange figure. At first glance, Alyssa thought it was a man, but the more she looked, the less human he seemed. His skin shimmered with an otherworldly, iridescent hue. His muscles were massive, rippling beneath his battle-worn armor. His eyes glowed faintly, a soft, intense green that sent a shiver up her spine. Before she could take another step, the figure stirred, his eyes snapping open, and he rose to his feet with a speed and grace that took Alyssa's breath away. The warrior's gaze locked onto her, and for a moment, time seemed to stretch. Without a word, he moved faster than she could track, closing the distance between them in the blink of an eye. Alyssa instinctively reached for the shovel leaning against a nearby fence post, brandishing it like a weapon. She wasn't a fighter, but she was no stranger to defending herself from coyotes or the occasional trespasser. In an instant, the alien warrior lunged, and Alyssa swung the shovel. The metal blade caught him in the chest with a sickening crack. The impact was jarring. He stumbled back, caught off guard. Alyssa, heart racing, swung again, this time aiming for his legs. To her astonishment, the warrior fell backward, his arms flailing as he landed in the dirt with a thud. For a moment, the world stood still. Alyssa stared, wide-eyed, at the alien who now lay at her feet, dazed and crumpled. She couldn't believe what had just happened. She, a simple farmer, had defeated an alien warrior. She'd never been so terrified in her life, but at the same time, something inside her surged, a strange, fierce pride. The warrior groaned, shaking his head as he slowly pushed himself upright, clearly stunned but alive. Alyssa took a cautious step back, still gripping the shovel like a lifeline. The alien's voice was deep, resonating, but with a soft edge of confusion. You defeated me? Yeah, I guess, Alyssa said, her voice shaking slightly. I didn't mean to. The alien blinked, the glow in his eyes flickering. He seemed to process her words for a moment before breaking into a grin, one that was somehow both menacing and impressed. You are strong, Earthling, he said, stronger than I expected. Who are you? Alyssa asked, lowering the shovel slightly, her curiosity winning out over her caution. The warrior stood fully, brushing dirt from his gleaming armor. I am Srak, a warrior from the planet Vortha. I came in pursuit of an enemy, but it seems fate has other plans for me. Alyssa's brow furrowed. What kind of enemy, and why are you here? I was part of an expedition to reclaim a powerful artifact, Srak explained, but my ship was damaged during a battle. I crash-landed here by mistake. Alyssa felt a strange pull of sympathy. The warrior was clearly not just a mindless invader, he was a soldier, stranded and vulnerable in a way that didn't quite align with the usual stories of alien conquerors. As the days passed, Alyssa couldn't shake the image of Srak lying in the dirt, dazed and vulnerable. Her farm became a sort of refuge for the warrior. Though their initial interactions were filled with awkwardness, she tended to his wounds, and in return, he offered to teach her his ways, his strength, his combat techniques, his knowledge of the stars. But it wasn't just Srak's physical prowess that fascinated Alyssa. It was the fire that burned inside him, the sheer tenacity of his spirit. He had the power to crush her with a single blow, but instead, he chose to learn from her world, and in turn, she found herself enchanted by his resilience. Srak, though a warrior born, had a deep respect for life in all its forms. As he shared stories of his travels through the galaxy, of far-flung planets, ancient civilizations, and battles fought on distant moons, Alyssa began to realize something that both humbled and amazed her. She wasn't just captivated by his strength, but by the man beneath the armor. Srak, despite his terrifying appearance, was gentle with her animals, patient with her questions, and eager to learn about the Earth he had never planned to visit. In return, she grew stronger, not just physically, but in spirit. He taught her techniques to fight and defend herself, to harness the strength within her that she never realized she had. And as time passed, they forged an unexpected bond, a deep connection that transcended the boundaries of their worlds. The alien warrior, once an invader, had become a partner, a teacher, a protector. And Alyssa? She had become something more than just a farmer. She had become a woman who, through an accident of fate, had learned that strength could be found in the most unlikely places, and that sometimes, the greatest battles were fought not with weapons, but with understanding. Together, they stood side by side, two beings from different worlds, united by a shared strength that neither had expected. End. Farmer accidentally defeats alien warrior, now she's enchanted by his strength, Part 2. HFY Sci-Fi story. Weeks passed since the crash, and the days had grown warmer as the harvest season approached. The seasons were changing, but the connection between Alyssa and Srac seemed to deepen with each passing day. She had never expected to find a friend, let alone a teacher, in an alien warrior. Yet here they were, working side by side. Srac had taken to the farm as if he had always belonged there. His expertise in survival tactics was invaluable, and his strength proved to be more of a blessing than a curse. He repaired broken equipment with ease, moved bales of hay that would normally take Alyssa hours to lift, and worked with an intensity that made her wonder if she could ever be as driven as him. And yet, despite his otherworldly abilities, Srac still struggled with the simplest things. One morning, Alyssa caught him trying to milk a cow with the seriousness of a battlefield strategy, his large hands fumbling awkwardly around the udder. "No, it's like this," she said, stepping up beside him. "Gentle, slow." Srac blinked at her, perplexed. "I've mastered weapons of war, but this is an art I've yet to comprehend." Alyssa chuckled, showing him how to do it properly. There was something strangely endearing about the way he approached these tasks. It made him more human, or at least, more relatable. "I never thought I'd have an alien on my farm," Alyssa said, wiping her hands on her jeans after they'd finished. "But I can't deny, it's been kind of nice." Srac looked at her, his green eyes studying her face with the same intensity he had when they first met. "I did not expect my journey to end like this. Earth is not the place I intended to be, but I find its people intriguing." Alyssa smiled softly, though a hint of sadness flickered across her features. "We're not so different. You know, we all fight for something. For survival. For purpose. Sometimes, that's all we have." Srac's gaze softened. "Perhaps, Earthling, you are right." One evening, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of red and orange, Srac spoke more about his past. They sat on the porch of the farmhouse, the stillness of the night settling in around them. "I was born on Vortha to a family of warriors," he began, his voice distant, filled with the weight of his memories. "We are bred for battle, trained from birth to be the strongest, the fastest, the deadliest. There is little room for other pursuits." Alyssa nodded, listening intently. "So, you never had a childhood?" He shook his head, a bitter edge to his voice. "We are raised in the art of war, Alyssa. My earliest memories are of weaponry, combat drills, and the constant training to prepare for the day we would fight for the glory of Vortha. It is a life of honor, but also of constant conflict." Alyssa felt a pang of sorrow for him. "That doesn't sound like much of a life. No room for peace?" Srac looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Not until I met you." Alyssa's breath caught in her throat. "Me? You are different from the people I've known. There is a strength in you that is unlike any I have encountered. But it is not the strength of weapons or war, it is the strength of resilience. You fight not for glory, but for survival, for those you love. That is something I am only beginning to understand." Her heart swelled with a mixture of pride and tenderness. In some strange way, their worlds had collided in such a way that they had both found something they never expected. He had taught her how to wield strength in ways she never thought possible, and she had shown him that strength didn't always have to come from a blade. "I never thought I'd end up teaching an alien warrior how to survive," Alyssa said, her voice light but filled with affection. Srac smiled, a rare, soft smile that made his eyes seem less like those of a battle-hardened soldier and more like someone who had finally found a place to belong. And I never thought I would learn to find peace in such a place. But the peace they had begun to build was fleeting. News of a shipwrecked alien warrior on Earth had spread, carried by the whispers of those who had seen the strange craft crash in the distant hills. While Alyssa and Srac worked to keep his existence a secret, it was only a matter of time before other factions of the Vorthan military, still searching for him, arrived to claim him. One morning, while Alyssa was tending to the vegetable garden, she saw it, a large ship, unmistakably alien in its design, descending slowly from the sky. It wasn't the same ship Srac had crashed in, it was far more advanced, sleek and imposing, with weapons clearly visible on its surface. Srac, who had been working on the barn roof, saw it too. His face hardened, his expression closing off. He leaped down from the roof in a single bound, landing in front of Alyssa. "They've found me," he said, his voice low and grim. "The others." Alyssa's heart raced. "What are you going to do?" Srac looked at her with a mixture of resolve and regret. "I must go. I cannot stay here, not with them searching for me. My people will never stop until they reclaim me." "But you don't belong with them," Alyssa protested. "You belong here, with me. We can find a way to stop them." Srac shook his head, his jaw clenched. "It's not that simple. I was born to fight, Alyssa. My fate is written in the stars. But you have your own destiny here. You don't need a warrior. Not like me." Alyssa's chest tightened as she felt the weight of his words. She had known, deep down, that this day would come, but knowing didn't make it any easier. "You've taught me so much," she said, her voice trembling, "more than anyone ever has. I don't want to lose you." Srac stepped closer, cupping her face in his massive hands. His eyes softened, and for a moment, she saw the warrior, strong, proud, and vulnerable all at once. "And you've taught me more than I ever thought possible. You've given me something I thought I lost long ago, a reason to fight." Alyssa swallowed hard. "So, what happens now?" The alien warrior paused for a moment, then turned toward the ship descending from the sky. "Now, I make sure no one threatens what you've built here. I won't let them take me without a fight, and if they do, I won't let them destroy what you've taught me." And with that, Srac turned to face the approaching danger, his body ready for battle, but his heart torn between the life he had known and the life he had begun to build on this strange world called Earth. End of Part 2. Farmer accidentally defeats alien warrior, now she's enchanted by his strength, Part 3. HFY Sci-Fi story. The alien ship hovered ominously above the farm, its engines emitting a low hum that vibrated through the earth. Alyssa's heart pounded as she stood in the dirt, her mind racing. She hadn't expected this, no one had. A strange twist of fate had turned her simple farm into the center of a galactic struggle. And now, the one person she thought she could trust, the alien warrior who had become so much more, was about to face a battle that might tear them apart. Srac stood in front of her, his broad back facing the ship, his stance unwavering. The faint green glow in his eyes was brighter now, filled with purpose. "You don't have to do this," Alyssa said, her voice shaking. She took a step forward, her hand reaching for him as if that could change the course of what was about to happen. "There has to be another way." He turned to face her, his expression a mix of regret and determination. "I wish there were, Alyssa. But the Vorthan military does not see the world as you do. They will stop at nothing to reclaim me, and they will destroy everything in their path to do so. If I don't confront them now, it will be you they come for next." Alyssa's breath caught in her throat. The thought of losing everything she had worked for, losing him, was almost too much to bear. But as she looked into his eyes, those glowing, fierce eyes, she realized something. She wasn't just a farmer anymore. She had become something more in the past few weeks. She had become a partner, a fighter, and someone who was willing to protect what she had, even if it meant standing beside Srac in the face of a battle that seemed impossible to win. "I won't let you do this alone," she said, her voice steady despite the panic churning in her chest. "I've learned from you. I'm not just some helpless earthling anymore. I can help." Srac's eyes softened. He knew she was strong, but this was different. This was a battle with no guarantees, a fight that could easily destroy both of them. But he couldn't stop her. He couldn't ask her to stand aside, not when he had seen the fire in her heart. "If you truly wish to fight," Then you must be ready for what is to come, he said, his voice grave. The Vorthan military doesn't negotiate. They conquer. Alyssa took a deep breath, gripping the shovel she had once used to defend herself. It seemed absurd to be holding it now, but it was all she had. I'm ready. Shrek looked at her for a long moment, as if trying to gauge whether she truly understood what she was getting into. Finally, he gave a single nod. Then we fight together. With that, he turned back toward the ship, his muscles tensing in anticipation. The craft began to descend more rapidly now, its sleek, metal surface reflecting the setting sun. The sound of the engines intensified, and Alyssa could feel the ground trembling beneath her feet. She had never been more afraid in her life. The ship finally landed with a heavy thud, kicking up dust and dirt into the air. The hatch opened, and a group of Vorthan soldiers, tall, armored figures with weapons that hummed with lethal energy, stepped out. They stood in a formation, their eyes scanning the land before settling on Shrek. "Traitor," one of them called out in a voice that resonated with authority. "You will come with us. This planet is of no consequence to our empire, but your actions here have disrupted our mission. Surrender now." Shrek's stance remained defiant. "I will not return with you. I belong to no empire. I belong to myself, and to Earth." Alyssa's heart beat faster as she tightened her grip on the shovel. It felt useless against their weapons, but she wasn't going to let him face them alone. She wasn't going to stand by and watch him be taken. The leader of the Vorthan soldiers sneered. "You have chosen your fate, Shrek. And you, human, do you truly think you can stop us?" Alyssa met his gaze, her voice steady despite the dread curling in her stomach. "I'm not going to let you take him." The Vorthan soldiers looked at each other, amused by her defiance. But then, the leader raised a hand, signaling for them to attack. Shrek sprang into action, his alien reflexes moving so quickly that Alyssa barely had time to react. He charged at the soldiers, moving with the precision of a trained warrior, his massive fists swinging through the air. He fought with a brutal grace, each strike sending a soldier sprawling backward. Alyssa, with no weapon but her shovel, rushed forward, her movements fueled by adrenaline. She swung it at the nearest soldier, hitting him in the leg and causing him to stumble. He turned, surprised, but before he could raise his weapon, Shrek's fist landed in his chest, knocking him out cold. The rest of the soldiers hesitated for a fraction of a second, unsure of how to deal with the unexpected resistance. That was all the time Alyssa needed. She swung the shovel again, knocking the weapon out of one soldier's hand. He growled in frustration, but before he could retaliate, Shrek was there, his fist connecting with his jaw in a crushing blow. But there were too many of them. More soldiers were pouring out of the ship, their weapons flashing with dangerous energy. The odds were turning against them. Shrek was fighting valiantly, but even he couldn't take on a whole squad of Vorthan soldiers. Alyssa's heart sank as she realized they couldn't hold them off forever. Just as the tide of the battle began to turn, Alyssa's eyes caught a glimpse of something in the distance, a small, glowing object falling from the sky. Her heart leapt in her chest as she realized what it was, another ship. But this one was different. It was sleek, unmarked, and clearly designed for stealth. The ship landed with a soft hiss, and out stepped a single figure. This one was not like the Vorthan soldiers. The new arrival was clad in dark, flexible armor, and their helmet reflected the dying light of the sun. The figure raised a hand, and suddenly, the air around them seemed to shimmer. The Vorthan soldiers froze, their weapons going limp in their hands. Shrek paused mid-fight, his head snapping toward the newcomer. The figure removed their helmet, revealing a familiar face, one that Alyssa had never expected to see again. "I didn't think you'd need help," the newcomer said, a smirk on their lips, "but I suppose I misjudged the situation." Alyssa's eyes widened in disbelief. You're one of them?" Shrek's gaze softened as he looked at the newcomer. "Not one of them, one of us." Alyssa was left standing, stunned, as the mysterious figure walked toward them, ready to end the battle before it could escalate any further. End of Part 3. Farmer accidentally defeats alien warrior, now she's enchanted by his strength, Part 4. HFY Sci-Fi story. Alyssa stood frozen, her mind struggling to process what was happening. The figure who had just arrived, one who seemed to possess the power to end the battle in an instant, was neither an enemy nor a Vorthan soldier. No, this person was something else entirely. Something familiar, yet completely unexpected. The mysterious figure, who had removed their helmet to reveal a calm, confident face, stepped forward, their eyes glinting with a knowing light. "You're not with the Vorthen military?" Alyssa asked, her voice trembling as she tried to make sense of the situation. The figure shook their head, a soft chuckle escaping their lips. "No, I'm far from it. I'm from a different faction, one that has been watching, waiting." Srak, still panting from the battle but now visibly relieved, gave a slight nod. "This is Rhea. She was once my ally in the Vorthen ranks, but she broke away long ago. Now, she works with the Resistance, helping those like me who no longer wish to fight for the Empire." Alyssa's mind raced. Resistance? Vorthen ranks? She was out of her depth, caught in the middle of something far bigger than she could have imagined. "You've been watching us?" Alyssa asked, the words heavy with both suspicion and a touch of awe. "Why didn't you help sooner?" Rhea's gaze softened, her lips curling into a small, almost apologetic smile. "I couldn't risk it. The Vorthen military has eyes everywhere, and I had to be sure that you weren't just another trap." But Srak here, he proved himself. His decision to fight for Earth, to choose a different path, made it clear that you weren't just pawns in some galactic game. Alyssa turned to Srak, the weight of his past crashing down on her again. "So, all of this, the battles, the secrecy, the Vorthens coming after you, it was all because of them?" Srak's expression darkened, his voice tinged with regret. "Yes, I was born to fight for the Vorthen Empire, but over time, I saw the cost, the destruction, the oppression. I couldn't stand by and watch it anymore. That's when I left. I came here, to Earth, seeking peace, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. And now, we know you're not alone," Rhea added, stepping closer to Alyssa. "The Vorthen Empire is hunting you both, but we're not going to let them destroy what you've built." Alyssa glanced at the battlefield. The defeated Vorthen soldiers were starting to stir, and their weapons were beginning to hum back to life. She didn't know how long they would stay down. There was a storm brewing, and it was only a matter of time before more ships came. "You're part of the Resistance," Alyssa said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "What do we do now?" Rhea's eyes flashed with determination. "We finish this. We stop the Vorthens from coming here. It's time we end their reign of terror." Srak turned to face her, his expression hardening. "And I will make sure they never threaten Earth again." Alyssa's heart pounded, but this time, there was no fear. Instead, there was a spark of something else, something that she had never felt before. Purpose, strength, a desire to protect the home she had fought so hard to build. With Srak and Rhea standing by her side, she realized that she didn't have to be afraid of what was coming. She wasn't alone anymore. "I'm in," Alyssa said, her voice firm. "Let's end this." The group began to move quickly, their minds focused on the task ahead. Rhea led them toward a small, hidden bunker that she had established deep in the hills, a place where she could coordinate with other members of the Resistance and plan their next steps. As they made their way toward safety, Alyssa couldn't shake the feeling that their small town had just become a battlefield, one that would change everything. The bunker. The bunker was concealed beneath the earth, an unassuming entrance nestled among the trees. Inside, it was a stark contrast to the farm, high-tech equipment, monitors flashing with information, maps of the galaxy spread across tables. Alyssa had expected a simple command center, but this place was far more advanced than she had imagined. Rhea gestured for Alyssa to follow her, leading her to a table where a holographic display projected an image of Earth, its continents, oceans, and cities glowing under the light. The hologram flickered, and images of ships, movement in the sky, and troop formations were added. The battle was far from over. The Vorthen military had already begun to mobilize. "We don't have much time," Rhea said, her tone urgent. "We need to act fast. The Vorthens are preparing a larger assault. If we don't stop them now, they'll send reinforcements. We need to cut them off at the source." Srak stood beside her, his arms crossed, his eyes scanning the map with focus. "We need to find their command center, the place where they're coordinating the attack. It's somewhere in orbit, above Earth. We hit them there, and we cripple their forces." Alyssa looked at both of them, their confidence infectious, yet the weight of the situation settled on her shoulders. "What do we need to do?" Rhea exchanged a glance with Srak. "We have an ally in the Vorthen fleet, a defected officer who owes me a favor. We'll use that connection to get us aboard one of their ships. From there, we'll infiltrate their command center and shut down the operation. Alyssa nodded, her resolve solidifying. She wasn't just a farmer anymore. She was a fighter, like Srak, like Rhea. Together, they could stop the Vorthons, stop the war that had followed them to Earth, and protect the world they had all come to care for. The plan was set. Rhea, Srak, and Alyssa would board a Vorthon ship using the Resistance's secret contact, who had a ship capable of evading detection. From there, they would infiltrate the Vorthon command center, disable their communication network, and sabotage their fleet. It wasn't a perfect plan, and the risks were immense, but they had no choice. Earth had become a battleground, and if they didn't act now, their world, and everything they cared about, could be lost. As they prepared to leave the bunker, Alyssa found herself standing next to Srak once more. He was quiet, his face hard with determination, but there was something in his eyes that told her he wasn't sure what would happen next. He had fought for his people, for his world, but now, he was fighting for Earth, for her. "You're not alone, Srak," she said softly. "We're in this together." Srak glanced at her, his gaze softening for a brief moment before he nodded. Together. And with that, they stepped into the unknown, prepared to fight back against the empire that had followed Srak across the stars, ready to protect the home that had become their new battleground. End of Part 4. Farmer accidentally defeats alien warrior, now she's enchanted by his strength, Part 5. HFY Sci-Fi story. The days blurred together as Alyssa, Srak, and Rhea prepped for their mission to infiltrate the Vorthon fleet. The small resistance base, hidden deep within the hills, buzzed with activity as more operatives scrambled to finalize plans. The air was thick with tension, but there was also a sense of unity, of purpose. This wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about reclaiming Earth's future. Alyssa couldn't shake the feeling that they were preparing for something monumental, something that would shape not just her life, but the fate of their world. And, in a way, it already had. She had gone from a farmer, minding her own business, to a key player in an intergalactic struggle. It was hard to grasp, but in her heart, she knew she was ready. The night before they were set to launch their mission, Srak and Alyssa stood outside the bunker, watching the stars, the same stars that had guided him across galaxies, the same ones that now felt like a distant reminder of everything they had lost, and everything they were about to fight for. "I used to think the stars meant only one thing," Srak said quietly, his eyes fixed on the sky. "Victory, glory, conquest. I thought that was my purpose." Alyssa stood beside him, her arms crossed as she took in the vastness of the universe above them. "And now?" "Now," he replied, glancing at her, "I see them differently. They're a reminder that there's more out there, but that doesn't mean I have to chase it. There's something here, on Earth, that I've never had before. Peace." Alyssa's chest tightened. He was no longer just the warrior from another world. He was a person, someone she had come to care for deeply. She had fought beside him, laughed with him, and now, she was about to face a battle that could tear them apart. But no matter what happened, she knew this, he wasn't just a stranger who had crashed into her world. He had become part of her story. "I've found something here, too," she said, her voice low but steady. "Something I didn't even know I was looking for. I'm not just fighting for Earth anymore, Srak. I'm fighting for us." He turned to face her fully, his eyes softening in a way she hadn't seen before. "And I'll fight for you, Alyssa. For this world, for everything we've built together." The moment hung in the air between them, a silent promise passing from one to the other. But there was no time to linger. The mission was waiting. The infiltration. The mission was dangerous, but it had to be done. The Resistance had managed to acquire a stealth ship, one capable of slipping past the Vorthon's radar systems. Rhea, ever the tactician, had mapped out a route that would get them close to the Vorthon command center without detection. But there were no guarantees. Once inside, they would have to disable the Vorthon's communication network and prevent them from launching a full-scale assault on Earth. The ship hummed quietly as it lifted off from the hidden base, its cloaking devices engaged. Alyssa, Srak, and Rhea sat in tense silence, each one mentally preparing for what was to come. Alyssa clutched a small handheld device that would allow them to hack into the Vorthon's communication system once they were aboard their flagship. It felt like a lifetime ago that she had been using it to plant crops. Now, it was a key to their survival. The journey to the Vorthen fleet felt long and treacherous, the stars flashing by in an endless stream. They were getting closer. The massive ships, enormous beyond anything Alyssa had ever seen, appeared on the radar, their cold, metallic surfaces glinting in the light of distant stars. They were close now, too close. Rhea turned to them, her eyes gleaming with intensity. We're entering the Vorthen fleet's outer perimeter. Get ready. This is where it gets dangerous. The ship plunged deeper into the fleet, maneuvering between massive, looming warships. Alyssa's pulse quickened as they dodged scanners, creeping closer to the heart of the enemy's stronghold. But as they neared the flagship, an alarm blared through the ship's speakers, slicing through the tension. Cloaking system compromised. Engaging countermeasures. The ship's automated voice rang out. Alyssa's stomach dropped. We've been spotted. Rhea cursed under her breath. Hold on, I'll get us through this. The ship shuddered as they swerved to avoid a barrage of plasma fire. Alyssa's grip tightened on the nearest console as she fought to keep herself steady. Shrek moved to her side, his strength anchoring her as they both braced for impact. Outside, a network of enemy ships began to close in, their weapons charging for a final blow. Alyssa felt the weight of the situation crashing down on her. It was all or nothing now. Rhea, Shrek shouted over the noise, his voice steely and determined. We have to make it to the flagship. If we don't, Earth is lost. Rhea's hands flew over the controls, her face a mask of concentration. Just a few more seconds, stay with me. Then, with a sudden jolt, they broke through the outer defenses, the ship's cloaking systems firing back online just in time. The fleet's ships were left behind as they plunged into the heart of the Vorthen flagship. Inside the flagship, the interior of the flagship was a maze of sterile corridors, illuminated by harsh red lights that gave the whole place a menacing feel. Alyssa followed closely behind Shrek and Rhea as they navigated their way toward the heart of the ship. Their goal was simple: find the central control room and disable the communication system. Alyssa's breath came in shallow gasps as they moved quickly, but cautiously, through the dimly lit halls. Every turn could be their last, every shadow could hide an enemy. They reached the command center's outer door, and Rhea pulled up the schematics on a small tablet. This is it, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Once we're inside, we'll have to move fast. The longer we're in here, the more chance we have of being caught. Shrek glanced at Alyssa, giving her a small but reassuring nod. Stay close. The door to the command center slid open, revealing a large room filled with sleek control panels and alien technology. A small group of Vorthen officers stood near the center, their backs turned. It was the perfect opportunity. Rhea signaled them forward. In a blur of motion, Shrek darted toward the officers, his speed and strength overwhelming them. Alyssa's heart pounded as she watched, her eyes wide with awe. She couldn't believe how fast he was, how precise. It was like watching a predator in its element. But there was no time to watch. Rhea was already at a nearby console, working to hack into the system. I've got access, she muttered under her breath. Now, we just need to. An alarm sounded, louder than anything they'd heard so far. The Vorthens were onto them. Move, Shrek shouted, his voice commanding. He grabbed Alyssa's arm, pulling her toward the exit. But it was too late. The doors slammed shut, and Vorthen reinforcements flooded into the room, weapons raised. Alyssa's heart raced as she backed into a corner, her mind scrambling for a solution. She had no combat training, no experience with this kind of fight, but she wasn't helpless anymore. Not after everything she had learned. She glanced at Shrek, who was already in battle stance, ready to face whatever came next. And in that moment, Alyssa knew. They had come this far. They couldn't back down now. Together, they would fight. End of Part 5. Farmer accidentally defeats alien warrior. Now she's enchanted by his strength. Part 6. HFY Sci-Fi story. The room was alive with chaos. The Vorthen reinforcements flooded in from every direction, their weapons crackling with energy as they advanced. Alyssa's heart hammered in her chest as she tried to steady her breath. She was caught between the walls of the flagship's control room, with no easy escape and no clear path forward. Shrek moved like lightning, his strength and speed overwhelming the first wave of soldiers. His massive frame was a blur, his fists connecting with the Vorthons in a series of devastating blows. He was a force of nature, unstoppable and unrelenting, but for every soldier he took down, more seemed to pour in. Alyssa. Ria's voice cut through the noise, sharp and urgent. Get to the console. I can't hold them off forever. Alyssa's eyes darted to the control panels along the far wall, the glowing blue screens flashing with data. She hesitated for only a moment before her feet moved, driven by the urgency of the situation. She wasn't going to sit idly by and watch Srak fight alone. But the Vorthons were closing in. One of them, tall and armored, raised a weapon, aiming directly at Srak's back. Alyssa's heart lurched. She couldn't let that happen. Not now. Not when they were so close. Without thinking, she grabbed the nearest object, one of the alien tools Ria had picked up earlier, and hurled it at the soldier. The impact was enough to knock the Vorthon off balance, throwing his aim off just as he fired. The shot went wide, missing Srak by inches, and the soldier stumbled back. Srak reacted in a heartbeat. With a swift motion, he twisted the soldier's arm behind his back, sending him crashing to the ground with a loud thud. His eyes met Alyssa's, a fleeting moment of acknowledgement before he returned his focus to the remaining soldiers. Good shot, Srak said, his voice low but filled with a fierce pride. Alyssa barely had time to respond before Ria shouted again. Alyssa, the console, now. Swallowing her fear, Alyssa sprinted to the panel, her hands flying over the alien interface as she tried to decipher the unfamiliar symbols. She had no training, no experience with this technology, but her mind was sharp. She remembered the basics of the device she had used back on Earth. It was all about logic, patterns, and intuition. Come on, she muttered under her breath as her fingers danced across the holographic controls. The interface flickered, then froze, and for a moment, Alyssa feared she had lost her chance. But then, with a small beep, the system responded. Data streamed across the screen, and a series of locks on the Vorthon communication network began to unravel. Alyssa couldn't believe it, she was actually doing it. She was hacking into the heart of the Vorthon fleet's operations. But the clock was ticking. She could hear the sounds of the battle intensifying behind her. Srak was pushing the Vorthons back, but their numbers were growing. Time was running out. Just a few more seconds, Ria said, her eyes glued to the incoming data. We need to take out their relay systems now. If we don't, the entire fleet will know we're here. Alyssa's hands flew over the console again, inputting commands as fast as she could. Her mind raced, her pulse quickening with each passing second. Finally, she found the key sequence, a small, hidden command buried deep within the Vorthon's secure network. It was a long shot, but it was their only chance. Got it, Alyssa shouted, hitting the final command. The entire room shook as a massive pulse of energy radiated from the console, followed by a deep, resonating hum. The Vorthon ships surrounding Earth went silent for a moment, as if the very heartbeat of their fleet had been disrupted. The soldiers in the room froze, their eyes flickering between Alyssa and the now-dead console. What have you done? One of them growled, his voice a mix of fury and disbelief. Alyssa didn't answer. She was too busy staring at the now-blank holographic screen, a sense of relief flooding her chest. They had done it. They had shut down the Vorthon fleet's communication system. The battle had just tipped in their favor. But it wasn't over yet. Srak, seeing the momentary confusion among the Vorthons, launched himself at the remaining soldiers. With a single, brutal strike, he took down two more, his eyes locked on the remaining threats. Ria, Srak called out. We need an exit, now. Already on it, Ria said, her hands flying over her own console. I've rerouted power to the ship's engines. We're getting out of here. Alyssa barely had time to process the victory before Ria was moving, dragging her toward the exit. Srak was already clearing the way, his strength and speed making quick work of the remaining soldiers. They made their way down the corridor, Alyssa's heart pounding in her chest. The escape was swift, the fight still echoing in their ears. They reached the docking bay just as the alarms began to blare. The Vorthons had realized they were under attack. Get in, Ria shouted, pushing Alyssa toward the waiting ship. Srak was right behind them, slamming the door shut as the first Vorthon reinforcements arrived in the docking bay. With a flick of Ria's wrist, the ship's engines roared to life, and they shot out of the bay, narrowly avoiding enemy fire. Outside, the Vorthan fleet was in disarray, with their communications cut. The once coordinated assault had fallen into chaos. The ships were scrambling, trying to reconnect with each other, but it was too late. "We did it," Alyssa breathed, a sense of triumph washing over her. "Not yet," Srak said, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed the scene outside. "But we've taken the first step. Now, we finish this." The final assault. The trio spent the next few hours dodging enemy fire, evading Vorthan pursuit as they made their way back to Earth's atmosphere. The skies were still dotted with Vorthan ships, but the victory they had secured was undeniable. They had crippled the fleet's communications, leaving the Vorthans in disarray. As they approached Earth's orbit, Ria's voice broke through the tension. "We've bought Earth some time. Now we need to warn the Resistance and organize a full-scale strike against their command center." Alyssa nodded, her mind focused on the bigger picture. They weren't out of danger yet, but they had dealt a significant blow to the Vorthans. Earth's fate was still in their hands. Srak glanced at her, his expression softening. "We fight together, and we win together." With those words, Alyssa felt the weight of their journey settle around her. It wasn't just about defeating an alien army. It was about something much deeper, a fight for survival, for the future, and for the world they had both come to love. End of Part 6.